Good morning, everybody. It's really fantastic to be here. I don't know, 20 years, we clearly have been working in this for 20 years. We haven't solved anything. Everything remains to be solved. I enjoyed your talk very much. I'm not sure about the AI translation, but I think we got the gist of it. What I wanted to do today is really take us through some of the discussion. I have some slides that I have put forward, but I'm not sure I can see them. Hopefully, they will be somewhere. If I click, well, okay, maybe you can help me. No, there are no slides. That's okay. I wanted to show you a couple of slides, and those slides were actually talking about some of the work that we have done at CIPL at the occasion of 1 year of GDPR. We ran a survey, and based on our observations and work with our CIPL members, we looked at a number of positive impacts of GDPR, as well as some challenges in the implementation, what I call unfulfilled promises. Because what I feel is that sometimes GDPR actually enables us to do things, it provides us tools, but I'm not sure that we are really courageous enough to interpret the rules. And frankly, I'm not sure the data protection authorities are interpreting the rules always in the most fast-forward or forward-thinking way. So some of the benefits, and we'll talk about that, I'm deliberately being provocative. Some of the benefits that we have seen and identified related to what I call the business enabling aspect. And I think, Mr. Kelber, you talked about that in your speech as well. We have certainly seen data protection becoming board issue. It's moved from the back room to the boardroom. We have seen also a shift from privacy for compliance, as a legal compliance, to privacy as a business enabler, because what companies are telling us, those who are enlightened, those who see beyond law, is that in fact it helps them realize their digital transformation strategy. It is a business enabler because it's all about data, ultimately. And companies who are better in dealing with data, understanding where data is, managing data appropriately, are actually going to be competitively in a better position. And certainly GDPR has broken some of the silos within the organization. So you have a concerted effort between IT, legal, marketing, HR, chief data officer. Everybody's thinking in the same way. So these were some positive benefits. And in fact, we also saw some positive benefits around B2B competitive advantage. Those companies with better privacy programs and GDPR compliance were were better business partners. Companies want to deal with those who they trust in privacy. I know today you will be hearing from Cisco, but Cisco actually did a very interesting survey where they surveyed about 3,000 companies and business leaders around the world, and they looked at the maturity of privacy program, and they have found that these companies with the mature privacy program, their speed to market is quicker, to make a deal, is quicker than those without the privacy program. So 3.4 weeks it takes for privacy mature companies to make a deal with the business partners, outsourcing, IT, something like that, versus 5.4 weeks for those who don't have a privacy program. So to me, this is a real return on investment. That's why we should be doing data privacy, as well as because, of course, we want to protect privacy and have integrity and of the human being. So these were some of the positives. Of course, data protection officers, I think you talked about that as well, and the fact that there is now privacy teams in most companies is another one that companies talk about. And then finally, we've heard positives in terms of compliance benefits. Companies are much better dealing with risks, both to them and risks to individuals. They're better at preventing and being ready for security breaches. Interestingly, the Cisco survey says companies with privacy program have less breaches, and when they have a breach, they deal with it better, it costs less money, and the impact is less. So, and of course, certainly, there are other things like increased transparency, user-centric transparency, better dealing with individual rights, and better trust. So these are some of the positives. So I would like to ask our panelists, Klaus, maybe you can start first, because we haven't heard from you. Does this resonate with you? Deutsche Telekom is one of the leading companies, certainly has had a very comprehensive privacy program. Can you talk to us about some of the business benefits that go beyond just pure legal compliance?
Yeah, the main one you already mentioned is that we make easier business deals, for example. And we are, of course, preferred partner for many other companies nowadays because they can rely on what we do in the data privacy area. In certain areas, it also develops in the mass market already. When we think about the media feedback, we just launched also our Magenta Speaker, which is a digital speech assistant, which was very well perceived by the press media, for example, because we base this on European data privacy principles and want to be more transparent and more proactive towards the customer than the others. Nevertheless, I'm fully behind this, easier business to business, but this is really assumes that the other ones are also behind GDPR, and this is the bigger issue I have. Maybe we come back to that later, or I can tell you that there are some big cloud providers, for example, that cost us a lot of energy and nerves, literally, because they don't think that they have to be compliant with GDPR when they offer their services to European companies. And we have this, and it would make it much easier, like Cisco found out. If they would comply with GDPR, we would have much less to discuss, lose much less nerves. But the main issues are, nevertheless, the cloud. What is the name of the cloud?
What do you?
American
Cloud
Act. Cloud Act. Sorry, Cloud Act is the integration of sub-processors, and it's the audit rights. Yeah? And it cannot be that European companies have to sign contracts that say we will transfer your data, the data of your customers, to the United States enforcement authorities without telling you a word. Yeah? Cannot be. And this is something that has to be changed. Maybe I think the authorities will there align much more. Maybe we can do something together in this context, but there are still things to do, and there's still a way forward.
Okay. And Mr. Kelber, so we have heard that there has been this shift for privacy becoming a top board level issue. Have you seen that in Germany? As well, and what can the Data Protection Authority do to really get all companies to focus on privacy at really highest senior executive top board management level?
Enforce the GDPR in practice. So to show companies, that's on the one point, it could be a unique selling point on an international market, to have IT secure and data protection fair designed products and services, and to show them that the data leaks or a lack on technological protection of personalized data could lead to a massive loss of reputation and hard fines on your companies, and that means having a backdraft on in the competition with other companies in the end. So it should be a point on the meeting of every board in every company.
And do you think, I mean, this is again a bit of a leading question, but do you think that companies will only comply because they're scared of fines? And is that the strategy, to scare them with big fines? Or do you think also we can incentivize and promote good behaviors? And I think in your speech you talked about consulting and engaging and advisory role of the Data Protection Authority. Do you think that role is also important as well as enforcement, or bigger or less?
Absolutely. Sometimes really problems brought companies back in line, a loss in reputation in the past, and that was the start of some bringing in privacy as a culture in the company. Some of them really wanted to show that they're doing a fair business model with their customers, even on the data side, and that means the ideas of certification and other techniques to show that has to be brought to the front. And the EDPB has took a decision on the guidelines of certification among the GDPR, and now the second step is on the national level. But I hope that they will seize the first certificates for products and services at the end of the year. That means to show that this is a tested, data-friendly service or product.
Klaus, what do you think about certifications? And is this, I mean, we have identified that as one of the unfulfilled promises of GDPR. We feel not enough has been done.
Yeah, I mean, this is a task that has to be fulfilled by several players, also by the companies and by the industry associations, of course, but also by the DPAs and the Commission in the end. I think very positively about this certification and code of conduct solutions that are laid down in the GDPR. There are several initiatives going on currently, like the code of conduct for cloud, this SRIW is working with. We have an initiative coming from the Digital Summit of Germany, which focuses on pseudonymization solutions so that the people can choose pseudonymization solutions in the future on a more reliable, legal reliable basis. And there is another initiative that goes really for certification for trusted cloud solutions, which might cover the issues I just mentioned before. But I'm in good, really trust in these solutions, and I hope that we will be able to negotiate this quite quick with the DPAs when we bring it up to Brussels and have a good solution for the future that we can base our business on.
Right. So let's move on to talk a little bit about some of these challenges, unfulfilled promises. I'm not sure whether we don't have the slide, but anyway, Rebecca, you can share as sent to everybody. And please go to our website. There is a really full report on some of these positives and challenges. Some of the things we have identified as unfulfilled promises related, firstly, we talked about this, the needs to really speed up certifications, codes of conduct, and also certifications for data transfers, because that is something that certainly hasn't taken place yet. Again, binding corporate rules are used by many companies, not just as a data transfer mechanism, but actually to deliver and demonstrate accountability. And again, that hasn't been really realized in GDPR, joint economic activity. So we do want the board to really be more proactive and push. The other thing was talking about the board. Has there been enough harmonization the way the data protection authorities see things? We feel again that the culture of 28 or 27, I'm afraid one day, DPAs they don't quite see things the same way. And that has been obstacle to the larger harmonization and smoother operation of the board and one-stop shop potentially as well. I think you referred to some of the delays as well that we are seeing, but again, it's difficult when you have to enforce, some delays may be required. Another thing was about the role of consent. GDPR, we all hoped, has actually stopped this myth of consent being important and the only way to process data. It has got equal footing with other legal grounds, but both data protection authorities and the companies are still resorting to consent is the king. So, and maybe risk-based approach is in GDPR, but we haven't seen, again, its full implementation. So I actually echo Susanna's comments that Bitkom companies have said 40% of the 40% of the companies felt that some innovative projects cannot be launched because of GDPR. And that may not be because of GDPR. It may be because, again, we are not interpreting the rules with full courage because we are scared of these big fines. So can we a little bit talk about that? How do we interpret the rules in a most forward-thinking way? How do DPAs have this dual role of both protecting people and privacy, but also making sure that Europe stays competitive, Germany, Industry 2.0, 4.0, whichever we are, is enabled. And we do have European big techs and European smart car and European connected single market. So who would like to take that on? Klaus, do you want to maybe start? What are you seeing?
I can start and give some words to that. It's for me, it's of the utmost importance that the authorities collaborate in a very intensive way and look for harmonization and a common understanding. And most important point is, beside others, that if you want to agree or you want to release new guidelines, for example, that you discuss these at least before with the industry, so that we have the chance to bring up our points there and that we find adequate solutions in the end. So sometimes I doubt that all the guidelines we get from the board, meanwhile, are adequate with regard to that, what is really ruled out in a GDPR. Of course, it's a question of interpretation. but we should go for this together, because we also can tell you from an operational perspective what is a way to handle these issues, and what would be the best way, and what does not really work. And this really fastens our development in the new digital area. And this is important, because we have to get to speed up compared to the United States, of course, and China, for example. South Korea are ahead of us. This is not a data privacy issue itself, it's my personal belief, but we should not make it too complex.
A first comment on the consent topic. I don't think that we have too much focus on that. For example, every time I go to a doctor in Germany, they present me 2 or 3 pages of what I should consent with in regards on data. And most times I take the pencil, do this, say, oh, that's decided by law. No, that's part of our contract. No, I don't want to do that. And then most times just 2 lines, yes, you could give my information to those service who give the bill to me. That most time that's enough as a consent. Back to the boards. If you have a look on the minutes of the boards, the European and the German, then you see that in the last 17 months there is, and even in before with the group 29, there was a lot of work done for the ideas of harmonization, especially on developing guidelines, decisions on European binding processes, on the first COCs, standard contract clauses and things like coming in. Not on the decision about data protection law violations. Right. That has to be done. There are 2 less decisions made or presented to the board. When I came to the European Data Protection Board first in January, there was a lot of national point of view to topics. For example, if they've presented, there was a decision made in country XYZ. What does it mean to the European side? Then first say that was a national decision. Want to talk about that, and that changed. And one colleague from me, from Belgium, who left the board for retirement, Mr. De Boykelare, he said one sentence that was interesting. He said, "We are all independent authorities, but from May 2018 on, we are less independent from each other." And that has to be brought to mind to make that European-wide binding decisions, even if you are in a minority position. And then just to even to take that majority vote for your own practical enforcement, to have that harmonic European level for all the companies and all the citizens in Europe.
Do you think, to Klaas's point, that the board and also national data protection authorities, I know, of course, you have got a small board here in Germany, should be more open for engagement, consultations, before they issue the guidelines? And I note the FTC, for example, runs excellent workshops in advance of issuing an important guideline. To collect the views, to inform, because we find that the guidelines, 20 guidelines that have been published, they are open for consultation, people respond, but nothing ever changes afterwards.
I have a different point of view on that. For example, the guidelines on certification was presented to the public, and all stakeholders can give comments, and there were a lot of changes made to this. Yeah, for example, the decision about the COCs, where a lot of German companies and German associations and us as the German authorities said that we want to have a change on the idea of the monitoring body. There was a majority with another point of view to that. So we lost that decision, but that's a normal thing in a 28 or maybe 27 country associations like the European Union. And even the German conference, the German board, for example, with the evaluation process, which is led by my colleague from Baden-Württemberg, there are a number of conferences and workshops on what we will deliver at our point of view to the evaluation process of the GDPR.
Okay. In 20 seconds, I have a question, which is, how do you both feel about this new regulatory innovation that is coming out of the UK Information Commissioner? They're launching regulatory sandbox to be able to look at some innovative, cutting edge, but maybe gray and difficult areas of privacy compliance and the new technologies. Is this something that would, Klaus, you would be interested in taking part? Had you, does it exist here? Is this something that Germany might want to replicate or to push its innovation further in the data privacy
Of course,
compliant
you'd
way?
be interested in something like this. However, we should first have a look if we would not be able to do the same thing on the regulatory basis we already have. This is something which has to be done to be elaborated on, and then we can decide if we have a need for further discussion or not.
As I see at my grandchild, even in a sandbox, there has to be some basic principles.
Okay.
As long as that has a safeguard on this, we are willing to share that idea for some ideas of seeing how new technologies compete with the regulation of the GDPR.
Okay, well, and I hope that is something that we can take you up on. There is a lot of interest in replicating and, of course, balancing. I think we all feel a bit like this goat on the mountain when we're really balancing individual rights and the need to protect privacy, but also to push innovation and use data to drive better outcomes for everybody. So I think I have to stop now because I will never be invited to come again, and I would like to come again. Thank you very much. And please do, both of you, and also for being very open. And we made this quote you wrongly because I'm not sure about the translation, but we've got some interesting points that you have made. Please do share those slides with participants. I'm very happy for that to take place. So thank you very much.